Hey guys, I'm going to show you some additions, lens flare and head bobbing. Now the head bobbing has been added to the first person character controller, and you can adjust the vertical height and the sideways movement. So by default, so it works scrolling left, right, backwards and forwards, so it goes up, up, and like an inverted V, so up and around and back again. So you can adjust how much, if it's too much for walking. So you can adjust the speed at which it goes, how fast, and then also the height, and also the amount of the sideways movement. If you don't want any sideways movement, you just cut it off, or you do whatever you want. So yeah, it automatically adjusts according to the speed of the player. So if I change that now to just a test, see that? It just changed the speed just then. So yeah, it does work. So in other words, just get whatever, if you think that the actual default speed is not right, just change the factor, multiply it by a certain percentage. You can do it two ways, of course. You can do it through the set or change variable, hash name of the camera, and then bob speed will be one of them. So it's multiplied by 2. When I push that button, it doubled the speed. Or you can also just do it through JavaScript as well with this type of format. So set CopperCube variable, hash camera, bob speed, and multiply it by a factor there as well. That also does the same thing. So there's bob speed, there's the amount the camera goes up and down, bob up, and the amount of sideways movement is the bob side, can be adjusted as well. So there's your three there. So that and that. Just get the walk speed that you want normally, and then adjust the frequency to match you think is right for the player walking, and it will automatically speed up as the player speeds up as well. If you've got player running or something like that, it'll automatically adjust for that. Yeah, so that works fine. Forwards, back, left and right. Or I can speed it up, whatever. Might be a little bit, some people would say that's too much for, you just want a little bit. Anyway, you can adjust all that. So you play around with that. Now, I've also got lens flare. I'll just show you here. A lot of this CopperCube's based like 90 to 95%, probably closer to 95% from the just standard Aeroleak code, or an older version of it. So when you get some on the Aeroleak webpage, you've got a lot of different bits of code people have made over the years. This one's a lens flare back in 2011. I got the code for that. A lot of the codes are no longer available, unfortunately, but I was able to get this one. I was able to get the code on this one. So here's the actual, if you need the Visual Studio Solutions file, that may or may not work. It probably won't. It's so old, it probably won't work. 2011. Anyway, so that's the exe for it. The good thing is he's got the source code for it here. Now, I wasn't able to add these in as classes. It's just such a disaster trying to add new stuff into CopperCube. So anyway, I ended up cutting and pasting bits of the code that I needed, which is just in those two, and inserting it into CopperCube manually, which is it's the long and hard way, but it actually works anyway. So, in case you're wondering, this is the way it was set up before. So there's your lens flare, not too bad, and it uses Occlusion culling to determine when to cut the lens flare or not, basically. Yeah, so it's not too bad, is it? Yeah, I think my one's better though. This is just your basic one, so that's the demo. So I'll just get rid of that. Now here's my one. So I've put it into CopperCube, and it works really well. So it works in standard CopperCube, and also when you're using Occlusion culling, it works with that as well. I had issues with that originally, but I fixed it a lot. Okay, so here's just your generic sun. I'll turn on the lens flare, L. So there it is. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? Very good, actually, I would say. and you can adjust three things: the size of how big it gets, the alpha, the maximum alpha when it's closest to the center, like that, and which makes it bigger and stand out more, depending, and also how far away from the sun before it starts to activate. So those three things are adjustable. Yeah. It's not a bad setup by default, how it is. I'm pretty happy with that, the way it is by default, but you can change it all. So that's the lens flare, and I'll just turn on occlusion culling. So watch the frame rate. This is a large over 1 million polygon terrain, that's why the frame rate's a bit low. If I turn on occlusion culling, there it is, pretty much doubled the frame rate, so it does work, and the animated character is not flashing, the lens flare is not flashing. It was flashing in the beginning. I had to work that out, how to fix it. Yeah, so it'll cut in and cut out depending on things behind it and all the rest of it. Yeah, so that works pretty good. The API for this is 60B set lens flare. Now there's 3 inputs. You got to put the actual. You actually input the name of the node of the object you want to attach the lens flare to. Typically a sun object. You can only do one. You can't do multiple. You want it active, true or false. You can turn it on and off. This is optional. These last 2 is the size, the start, how far away from the center before it starts, and the maximum alpha. Mostly decimals. Just put decimals in. Somewhere between 0 or 1 is pretty good for that. Those are just general indicators. You can go higher than that if you really want to, but you generally wouldn't. When I turn on lens flare here with L, all I need is the C node of the sun. There it is. Set lens flare sun node. Lens flare active. I'm just switching it on and off with a variable. It's just true or false, and I'm putting in size, the start, and the max alpha. Size, okay. 0.6. Let's try going that up to 1.0. Just leave that as is for now. And just show you that it does work. I don't use occlusion culling for the culling of this lens flare. See, it's a lot bigger now, massively bigger. You know, I mean, it's not too bad. Maybe a bit too big, yeah. But anyway, you can see that works. So I'll put it back to 0.7 or something like that. Now the second one was starting between 1 and 5. Yeah, so the higher the number in this case will be, it'll start to activate the closer you are when you're looking at the center of the when you're looking directly at the lens flare direction. So the lower the number here, means it will start earlier. So if I go 2, it means it will start further away from the sun. Okay, so that's the lens flare. So it's still on now, more than before. So in other words, it's almost starts at the very edge of the screen. So yeah, so it starts further away, if you like. Yep, depending how you want that, and put it back to 4, and the last one was max alpha, so that'll affect the maximum alpha rate. So if I was to go to 0.65 instead of 0.35, you'll see that it'll be it'll stand out a lot more. I like it to be blended with a lot of alpha personally. So that should stand out a lot better now. Yeah, see, it's a lot stronger earlier on. The max alpha right there stands out really strongly when you're at maximum alpha, and it cuts in and cuts out a lot quicker too. So that's really strong. I would say it's too strong there, and then put it back. Put it back to 0.3 or something like that. Okay, activate it. There it is. Yeah, so now it's not quite as strong when it's right at maximum alpha. It's not too bad, is it? It looks pretty good like that. Yeah, I think it's alright. Not too bad. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, everything's working okay. Fix up the terrain a bit. Yeah, so anyway, just those two things are the main things you've been playing with. It wasn't so easy to get this lens flare to work. It took a long time actually, but you can turn it on and off if you want as well. Yeah, so it's pretty optimized fairly well, so it doesn't use too much processing. It's pretty good. It's not a shader. It's not shader driven, so it works both DirectX and OpenGL as well. So no problem there. Yeah, so that's pretty good. Yeah, if anyone wants to collaborate with stuff working in the engine, by the way, the lens flare does need. I've put it under media, so straight under where you run your game. You need to have this folder media/lens flare, and you need to have this flare. These other two images are just old stuff you don't really need, but you need this one for it to work. So it picks up all of these symbols and adjusts each one into that lens flare separately with its own color, alpha, size, everything. It'd be too much work to code, you know, the adjustments for each one of those through an API. That would be just too much work. So I've just fixed it as it is. Yeah, so yeah, but if you can always change those images out to other things if you wanted to, theoretically. Yeah, so that's meant to be like the sun object, I think. Yeah, like the glow, that's like a flare, that's like streaks. Yeah, it's like a circle, different types of things all get picked up and blended in that way. If you don't have that file, it won't work. But you could also swap it out for another file with the same number of things on it of the same name. It'll still work probably. Yeah, so if anyone wants to collaborate, adding new stuff into the engine, feel free. There's a ton of different things, you know, potentially for. You've got ray tracing, pathfinding, all this stuff actually works. But you have to get it to set up all the squares of your level and then tell which squares, what's the obstacles and what's not. So that's the part that's not done. Anyway, so there's other stuff you could add in. Ray tracing does work, but it has to be coded in. It's nothing straightforward. It'll take some work. For example, this is using a forked version of Irrelict from a long time ago. Does works pretty damn good. Whether that's possible to put some of that into CopperCube, good question. Don't know. So that's SM3. That's shader model 3. I think CopperCube uses up to shader model 2, but I don't know if you put shader model 3 code in there, will it actually work? It's based on the video card. The video card's no problem, that's really old. They all support that, it's fine. It should still work. Yeah, and there's heaps of stuff theoretically could be put in to CopperCube. God rays. Don't know about that one, might be tricky, but probably not quite as necessary. Got the lens flare anyway. All different shaders, right to texture effects, and other post-processing. There might be a couple of new ones possibly. It's all stuff like this has to be carefully adjusted to suit CopperCube from the old Irrelict code. With the lens flare, there was a lot of changes that I had to make to get it to work. It was not easy at all. These are just some of them. There was I've just recorded some of them. Vector 2D is not compatible with position 2D, even though they're both like Vector 2Ds. They're both effectively the same, but they're not compatible. I had to make a change to accept the difference. Yeah, so this is just how I got around it. Get interpolated. You need to use Vector 2D, not position 2D. Z buffer. EFC never doesn't exist anymore. It's just true or false. Material transparent effect doesn't exist anymore. It's just transparent. node set material texture doesn't exist anymore. Now it's material set texture. So there's different things like this have to be worked out. Why it's not working, and make the adjustments, and then get it to work. Link it all up, and then have it, set up a new API for it. It's interesting, just if you want to put some time. It is interesting to try and work it out, but you'd need a bit of time and skill. Anyway, if anyone wants to do that, help us out. That'd be appreciated. Let me know. Cheers.